Two great actors return to Broadway in two great plays directed by Sean Mathias, Pinter's No Man's Land and Beckett's Waiting for Godot. Performed in repertoire and starring my two guests here today, Sir Ian McKellen and Sir Patrick Stewart. Welcome, gentlemen.
He's Patrick, I'm Ian.
Just in case there was any misunderstanding.
Just in case there's any confusion, we got it down. It is such a thrill and such an honor to have you here with us at PBS. And we appreciate your generosity. In many ways, you two gentlemen have lived parallel lives, haven't you? Both legends of the classical stage, screen icons, and you are also knights of the British Empire. How would you describe your relationship? Are you kindred spirits? Are you friendly rivals, work buddies?
Oh. We're the same, really, aren't we? I mean, there is one distinction that you've not noted, which is that Patrick was born in Yorkshire, which is on the east of the United Kingdom, and I was born across the Pennine Hills in Lancashire.
You're going to have to explain to us what that means.
Rather superior area of the country, we like to think. And there's an age-old rivalry between the Lancastrians and the Yorkists, the Wars of the Roses. It goes right back to the Middle Ages. But apart from that,
there's another
there are others like us, aren't there, in the UK as well? There's Derek Jacobi and Mike Gambon. We all started in the regional theatres doing plays of all sorts, from Agatha Christie to Shakespeare, and then we were lucky enough to end up at the Royal Shakespeare Company. And as you say, since then we've gone rather long in parallel.
Since then we have, yes, but not at the very beginning, and I have to point this out because Ian was a young star when he was at Cambridge, and has, in a sense, been centre stage all of his career. And I saw,
as well it should be.
I saw him as a young actor and was overwhelmed by what he did, his work. And so I started out this relationship as a fan because I was working in relatively obscure regional theatre when Ian was working with Laurence Olivier in the West End.
Ah, I see. Yes.
However, eventually it balanced itself out, wouldn't you say?
Well, I remember meeting you in Los Angeles. You'd just been asked to be in some TV series that I knew nothing about. Star Trek. And you said to me, what did I think about signing a contract that might last as long as 7 years? And I said, Patrick, there's no decision to be made. Please don't go and work in Los Angeles. So did he take my advice? No, and here we are.
He's a sellout, that's all he is. And here we are, gentlemen. You find yourselves starring on stage again, not in one, but in two classic pieces, Beckett's Waiting for Godot and Pinter's No Man's Land. Familiar territory for both of you. And I was thinking, for mere mortal actors, taking on these masterpieces would be ambitious enough, but you're doing them both at the same time in rep. And our PBS audiences, we like to think, are pretty sophisticated people, but if you wouldn't mind, please explain what rep actually means. What are the logistics of doing two plays at the same time?
Rep is something that we're very familiar with, largely through our work at the National Theatre and with the Royal Shakespeare Company. It means that there are two or more plays in performance at the same time, often with the same ensemble of actors, and so a matinee can be one play, the evening performance another one, the next night yet another one, and the next night yet another one. So
it's masochistic.
But it's not. If you look at it from the point of view of keeping the diversity of the work, keeping the actors' interest and engagement alive, it's a thrilling, exciting thing to do.
We should explain that that's not a double bill. You don't come and see both the plays at the same time. You can, if you want, see one in the afternoon and one in the evening. And that's, I think, basically for people who are out of town who just have got one day to go to the theatre. But I think for us, it stops you getting tired, it stops you getting bored, it keeps you on your toes.
Sure.
And if we, as hope happens, the audience come to see both plays, then they join in the community and the enterprise, and we feel that everyone's on the same side. Sort of.
Now, how did all this come about, gentlemen? I understand a deal was brokered between you two. You both had your favorites, and you sort of, if you do this, I'll do that. If you do this,
have already done a production with Sean Mathias of Waiting for Godot very successfully in London and on tour around the United Kingdom. Sold every single ticket. And at the end of that enterprise, I think I was keen to carry on doing it. And when the possibility of doing it in New York came up, I was very keen on that. Then, meanwhile, Patrick had had the idea of fulfilling his long-time ambition.
38 years, actually, from when this play had its London premiere with John Gielgud and Ralph Richardson.
You said you saw it 3 times.
I saw it 3 times in 1 week and would have seen it a 4th time if I could have afforded the ticket. And I have been obsessed with the play ever since and imagined that one day I would play it. Also, I imagined that I would play the role of Spooner, which is really the showy role in the play, until I came to do Waiting for Godot with Ian. And we shared a dressing room for 22 weeks during that time. And little by little, I came to see that the role of Spooner could have been created for Ian. And so I began a gentle, subtle, persuasive campaign of trying to turn him on to
Jihad is
that
more
play.
like it, probably.
So basically,
we've
both got our own ways. I'm doing more Waiting for Godot. Patrick's getting to do No Man's Land. But they do fit very well together.
Sure.
And there are 4 characters in each play. Yeah. So we're now joined by Shula Helmsley and Billy Crudup in both plays.
It rounds it out nicely.
And we do very much feel we're a company, which is what we like to be part of, and that repertory is part of being in a company.
What would be more impressive is if on your off night, what is it, Monday night, you do a all-male Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. You have the 4 characters.
Do you think Edward Albee would let us do that? Because I find that very attractive. There might be a little bit of squabbling as to who gets to play Martha, however.
You could bring out all those long wigs you've got at home.
I would imagine you'd have anyone would have a hard time saying no to you guys. Both plays do complement each other, I find. In some ways, they are companion pieces. They both explore that sometimes not so fine line between fantasy and reality that we all struggle with. And they both toy with you. I mean, it's heavy, profound stuff, but you guys are taking a lighter approach to it, right?
You can't help it. When we did Godot, we rehearsed it as a play. It's always thought by audiences throughout the decades to be a difficult play. Yeah. It's not difficult at all. It's very simple. It's full of variety. It's not your standard play. It's about life, and life doesn't always go in quite the way you expect it. And so with the play. But we just did it for an audience, and they laughed. But we didn't know that was going to happen, and they laughed uproariously. They laughed so much we had to work out ways of stopping them laughing.
Indeed.
So that's the plays rather than us. But the connection between the two that concerns me is that they both seem to be about old age. Mm-hmm. The 2 characters in Waiting for Godot have known each other for 50 years, is that right? So they're probably in our 70s as we are. And in No Man's Land, they're a little bit younger, but they're both under the influence of age and its ravages. Yeah. And so that doesn't mean to say that we want only old people to come and see them. But it's very nice when you get to this age not to have to be trying to pretend to be a lot younger than we are. It really is about life as we know it.
Well, and in fact, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it was young people who came and made all the difference with Waiting for Godot, because they didn't bring with them any baggage from the 50s and 60s and 70s about, and I've got to take you up on a phrase you used because people will remember it. Heavy and profound, you said. Now, these 2 plays have profundity if you want to look for it, and a lot of people would enjoy that, but heavy, absolutely not. They're light as air, delicate, humorous, witty, sometimes alarming, sometimes perhaps terrifying. There are threatening and dangerous aspects to these plays, but they are not heavy.
And nor are they for just intellectuals. I think Godot got a very bad rap when it was first done. It was breaking so many rules of the theatre. It was in 2 parts. Mm-hmm. And when Waiting for Godot first came out, all plays were in 3 parts: Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. But no, this was in 2 parts. And this was a shock. And the characters seem on occasion to be addressing the audience. What are they doing? Yeah. But nowadays, anyone who's seen Monty Python can enjoy Waiting for Godot. I mean, it has that variety and that
I find it quite liberating. I go to the opera quite a bit too, and I don't speak Italian. I let the experience wash over me, even though I don't understand every word that's spoken.
Yes.
And I was thinking, if an audience applies that to both of these pieces, I mean, scholars have spent their careers trying to figure out what these plays mean, and no one seems to get anywhere.
I think
can you enjoy it on that level?
Yes, trying to work out what the plays mean is if you could write down what these plays meant, there would be no point in having the plays, would there?
Yes.
The plays only make sense when you see them in the theatre. Well, I'd be unhappy if people didn't respond to the language, particularly in the Pinto, which is, he was such a master and so witty and so alert, and words spring out at you and you hear them for the first time. But you don't have to have a running translation as to what it all means. No. What does life mean?
Is that an actor's job to even interpret the material? I mean, actors are very modest, saying, "Oh, I'm merely a vessel for the material." I mean, how do you guys feel about that?
We have felt originally we were Waiting for Godot, and then when several months ago we came to rehearse No Man's Land, that we had a very specific job, which was to root everything that happens and every word that is said in the plays into something truthful and into an aspect of life that people will recognize as life, being like their own lives. I think that has dominated our approach to them, would you say?
Absolutely. And when you see these two so-called tramps in bowler hats coming on and Waiting for Godot, he and I know exactly where we were before we stepped onto the stage. We know what we were doing 50 years ago. We have a relationship that goes back. And it's not invented, it's all rooted in the play. Now, whether the audience pick up on that doesn't matter, but we hold on to that for dear life. We are real people in a real situation.
And what you mentioned, Patrick, about the audience relating, I know I very much relate to, and I think everyone can relate to, we're all revisionists with our history, aren't we? And especially when it comes to relationships. So these characters, they seem nostalgic for a past that may or may not even have been their own.
Yes, there are contradictions in both the plays as to what has happened and what is imagined or partly remembered. But that happens to me on a daily basis. I forget. I'm confused about things. And that aspect of the play, these misunderstandings and disconnections, are the things that happen to people all the time.
Yeah. And what is it like, gentlemen, to revisit a piece? We're going on, what, 4 or 5 years since you've done Godot, and I mean, is it a chance to sort of go back and maybe right or wrong, or to explore a part of a character you felt you left untouched before?
It's exactly
I mean,
that.
It's a unique opportunity, isn't it?
Well, not unique. I mean, because there are still, thank God, very few companies of actors who have plays in their repertoire. My dream as an actor would be to have about 10 plays that I knew and could do, and just did them one after the other, one after the other, one after the other. This is a little bit different. We're coming back to the play. We're rehearsing with 2 new wonderful actors. And so we're forced to re-examine. But frankly, I try, sometimes to Patrick's annoyance, to, understanding as well, to re-explore every night. I don't like to repeat. I think that's dead theatre, and I'm for live theatre. I'm for a performance that is just especially for the audience coming to see the show tonight or this afternoon. And so I'm open to anything that might be have a minuscule different. And but yes, re-rehearsing these plays, we're both trying not to do what we did before, lest we fall into some old habits and old tracks that don't lead anywhere. So yes, it is a privilege, and I think I can't help but feel the performance is going to be even better than it was before.
I hope so. No one questions why operas are performed over and over again, why pieces of music are performed over and over and over again, because there is always a re-examination possible, and new blood, new energy, new insights that create the experience as if for the first time. And that's all that we're doing. And certainly, yes, Ian is always rooted within the framework of the play, can be very adventurous.
It keeps you on your toes, right?
It totally keeps all of us.
But you
on
do
our
that. You
toes.
do the same.
Yes, because it is a corny cliche, but living in the moment is our special duty. And if you do that, you are not just recreating what has gone past night after night before.
I hate to use a sports analogy. Believe me, I don't use them often, but I play tennis, and I've always been told to play tennis with someone better than yourself, to always up your game and keep your game strong. Is that the same thing with acting? I mean, do you find you're sharper when you're with a sharper partner?
Well, it was very sweet when Nadal beat Djokovic at the American Open, and he thanked Djokovic for helping him play better. Of course you work with people who are, well, better's not the word really, but just who are going to be challenging, who you don't want to ever feel that you're somehow carrying the other actor. You want to be carried by them, or to carry each other, do it together. And that's true not just of us, but of Shula and Billy. And yes, that's right. You do it together, and together you change. Together you improve.
Can we talk about audiences for a moment here? In America, we've come a long way with irony, as I'm sure you guys have seen over the years. But we're still very literal here, and we like our theater to be very much driven by plot. And we like things spelled out for us, and we don't do so well with sort of the vague. Do you find that you have to indulge American audiences?
My first Broadway appearance was in 1971 in what has now become a legendary production, Peter Brook's production of Midsummer Night's Dream, the White Box production. We had been playing it very successfully in Stratford and in London. It had already become a production that was believed to be groundbreaking. We came here to the Billy Rose Theatre, as it then was, on 41st Street, and the audiences that we encountered showed us what kind of play we were doing, and they forcefully reminded us we were doing a comedy.
So they informed the work.
Yes. Okay. And I have found that, well, with all audiences in certain degrees, but certainly with American audiences, they engage so quickly. In No Man's Land, we get an audience reaction seconds into the play. That's the extent to which these audiences are focused, concentrated, and miss nothing. And certainly when it comes to humor, yes, including irony, they are right on top of it.
There is no greater thrill for an actor than being in a hit on Broadway. I've only had it once, really, with Amadeus, far too long ago now. But I've been here in Strindberg with Helen Mirren, and I've done Shakespeare on Broadway and the Brooklyn Academy of Music. Yes, did King Lear. And I never have to worry about American audiences, particularly on Manhattan. I was here with Dance of Death, Strindberg, Helen Mirren. And we opened the week after September the 11th, 2001. Now, if you remember, the bridges were closed. You couldn't get off the island. You couldn't get onto the island. And suddenly, all the shows that had been running for years, the producers and so on, didn't have an audience because the out-of-towners weren't in town. We just opened. We were packed. Strindberg. And an audience that was living a nightmare during the day came
Well, I remember at the time, because I was at that opening, the big question of the day was, Are we ready to be entertained again? Are we allowed?
Well,
to be
the answer
entertained
resounding
again?
was yes, and there's something about New York which is rooted in the theatre. It's part of the identity of New York. London, no. In London, we've got the Queen, we've got the national government, we've got the centre of all industries, all in London, and theatre is fighting for attention. But here, if you can make it here, you make it anywhere, and that really is referring to Broadway. That's referring to Broadway, and so putting a play on here keeps you on your mettle, and audiences are bright. They join in, as Patrick has said. And that just makes acting for them all the more thrilling. And no, I don't think any longer audiences expect just to have a plot. I think they want more than that, frankly.
Great.
And they get it with these two plays.
Oh, great, and they get it with you two, and it's going to be a thrill for whoever is lucky enough to obtain tickets. And you guys just wrapped up X-Men, the 4th?
We wrapped our portion of it at the end of April. Because of Ian's commitments to another blockbuster franchise in New Zealand,
Lord of the Rings,
we had to. They had to shoot the two of us out because we share our screen time together mostly in this film. I'm limited as to what I can actually say about it. We are, but we filmed for just over a month in Montreal, and Ian went off to New Zealand, and I went off to try to start learning No Man's Land.
Yes, that's right.
Is it simplifying things to say that, you know, even a big Hollywood blockbuster, at the end of the day, that's theater too? Do you find when you meet up on the set?
Well, it isn't theatre because there's no audience.
Yeah, right.
But we are an ensemble in those films.
That's true.
This is it's our 4th X-Men film, and there have been 2 Wolverine films and an X-Men First Class film. So when we reassembled in Montreal at the beginning of April, we were meeting old colleagues, and we are very much, and because this time Bryan Singer returned to direct this film, we were once again the unit that how many years ago had created the first X-Men.
And what a gift for both
Last
of you.
century, actually.
We've spanned 2 centuries.
Yes, he said that out loud. What a gift for both of you to be able to straddle both worlds and so
very
well.
grateful.
And what a gift for audiences. And
when I was here with Dance of Death, I went down on September the 12th to Ground Zero with Sean Mathias, our director, and Rachel Weisz, who was in town. And
doing another Pinter piece, The Betrayal.
Yes, she is. Yes, this season. And we went down those empty streets. They hadn't stopped people going. It was too early for that. And we saw that the mayhem and was speechless, really. But we turned a corner right by Ground Zero, and there was a group of firemen, exhausted, at a trestle table having a well-earned cup of coffee. And we just saw them. And I didn't wave or anything, I just looked, and one guy looked up at him and he said, "Hi, Magneto." And I suppose it was the sort of scenario in which he expected a superhero to arrive and put it all right. And well, I couldn't do that.
I'm sure you
But
you
I
make
went
his
down to
day.
Ground Zero yesterday to see that magnificent memorial.
It's impressive, huh?
Very impressive. And as we passed a fire station just along from it, I heard a voice say, "Hi, Magneto," and I looked up, and there was the face
It's
of a
a
fireman.
full circle moment.
It was.
Welcome back to New York.
Yes.
We'd like to ask you about PBS.
Yes.
Obviously, you're big fans. You've both been on PBS many times. You've contributed very much of yourselves to PBS. Why are you here today, and why is PBS important?
I lived in the United States for 17 years. I lived in California. It was my home, and there was a time when I thought it would always be my home, until I got a little too homesick for the UK. PBS and NPR, this may sound dramatic, but at times I think they were keeping me sane. I was seeing the kind of programming that I had been accustomed to all my life, largely because of the BBC and then the commercial channels in the UK. The range of material, the quality of the material, the substance that was being broadcast was what I would continually turn to if my soccer team were not on television that night. And the same would also apply to NPR.
Yeah.
Well, I'd go along with that, absolutely. And I've got some news for PBS viewers that I will be on, not with this partner, but with something rather similar, Derek Jacobi, in a new sitcom called Vicious. And I'll say no more about it than that, but that's been going down rather well in the United Kingdom. Well, it always, when you have a hit show on British television, and it's possible that it might come to the States, you always say, oh, pray God it's on PBS. Pray God there'll be no bloody commercials. Pray God they can just see the thing through.
It's a luxury nowadays.
Total luxury, but you know you hold on to it, and the thought of some politicians that the money is wasted on PBS is absolutely ludicrous, and shout at them because you know it's one of the aspects of American life which, as an outsider, seems to be absolutely crucial and a great asset.
It's a luxury, but it is an absolutely essential luxury.
One we have to pay for, one everyone watching has to contribute.
Yeah, and you know, whatever you pay, whatever you're able to contribute, it is still a great deal. It's a wonderful bargain. If you're giving thousands of dollars, it is an amazing bargain to have this available to you every day of the week, 365 days.
And you know when you give what you can, that you're doing it in the company of other people who are doing the same thing. And so there is a community of people who watch this program, and they're my sort of people. I suspect they're the same sort of people who try and go to the theatre when they can.
We're a good bunch.
Yes, you are.
Bravo, PBS.
Well, this has been a real pleasure, a real treat, and a real honor
for us
to have
too.
you both join us. Thank you so much, and break a leg.
Thank you. Thank you.